Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys, one of which has a scrolling banner.
That's right. You know, these things are fun too. You go into a candidate's debate or anything like that, and you can stand typically behind the TV cameras if they're there, or the webcast cameras, and you just go.
Yep. And if you want one, go to fairtaxstore.org and get one. They're priced pretty much at cost. We're not making a lot of money off, not only making any money off the FAIRtax store. Shipping is free.
Right.
So
pick up 3 or 4 of those scrolling banners, because if you're like me, you're going to end up wearing them out with all of this going on. So just make sure that you get a couple of them and give one to your friends so they can go and stand on the other side of the room. And also those palm cards are good to have. There's a little, like a short rack card that's cardstock, glossy, full color. It gives a lot of great information in a short amount. If you just hand that in, and some of the things, and I know that Ron and Elaine, and you have done this, is y'all have told me, and I think other people have done it too. They take the little business cards, and they, like, you go out to dinner or you go buy a pair of shoes or something, and you walk up and you're talking to whoever. You can say, "Hey, I want you to check this out," and it is just sort of a very passive contact. Gets them going. I need to take a look at that. We did that when we went to CPAC. We were doing that all over the place where we stayed throughout that weekend. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, we'll have to do that again sometime. It's probably a little too early to be recruiting people to come to CPAC next year. And again, we don't know if it's going to be in Florida or if it's going to be back in DC. So
there it is. That was great. Boy, it was nice to be in Florida in February. Let me tell you.
I've been in both places, and the Florida one is better than the DC area one for sure. I'll
sure.
tell you what, time again, to dig back into congress.gov. And I'm actually going to try to abbreviate this one a little bit, not go into quite as much detail and have as many stuff, because we got some cool stuff we're going to get into here on this FAIRtax Power Radio edition, something we've done before, but it's been quite a while, so we're just going to revisit this. But let's get going with our congress.gov. Again, we go to congress.gov, put the words Internal Revenue Code in the search bar. Be sure on the left side you're only checking legislation in the current Congress. And again, as you do that, as we are recording this, 1,673 hits on that search. If I remember right, last time we were there at WTOB doing the show live in North Carolina, the show right in front of us talked about how many bills had been introduced into the North Carolina General Assembly, and the number of bills introduced in the North Carolina General Assembly in total was less than the number of changes to the Internal Revenue Code right at the federal level. I don't know why that just popped into my head, but it did.
Just the numbers thing. I mean, the sheer numbers, the amount of material that gets loaded into the tax code. And now a lot of them don't see the light of day, but that's the starting block for a lot of the crazy stuff that goes on there in DC.
Yes, and we'll hit this one for the first time this year, that we will be back up there in October and doing a FAIRtax Power Radio live on WTOB Sunday morning, first Sunday in October. And if things work out like we think they will, Jade Wally's going to fly in for that one as well. So that's going to be fun. But that's in October, so that's a ways on down the road. Let me get on here with HR 7676. No text here, but this says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to assist homeowners in making safety, security, and accessibility improvements to their homes. This one also comes from Florida. That's Representative Charlie Crist from Florida 13. But you use the tax code to assist people to make safety, security, and accessibility improvements to their homes. I can't go into any more detail because that's all I've got on that one. What do you think of that?
There's enough there to tell me that it's going to be an incentive for me to fix the rail leading up my steps, or I'm thinking about getting a wheelchair ramp for the skateboard that I just bought.
You bought a skateboard?
Yeah, no, we've inherited one somehow on our porch. There is a skateboard. Now, the grandkids use it when they come over. However, I've been kind of tempted, but there's not a whole lot of grass that I can ride near on that sidewalk.
Yeah, I tell you, I just about broke my neck on a skateboard one time a long time ago. I swore off of them things, but those are hazardous to your health.
I'm getting on my bicycle right now. So,
all right, well, let's move on here. HR 7671 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide a tax credit for certain indoor air quality assessments and improvements. Add your favorite phrase, for other purposes. Another one.
You never know when you're going to need to throw something else into that bill.
Yeah. Why does that need to be in the tax code? To provide a tax credit for certain indoor air quality assessments and improvements. When I see the word certain in one of these things, I think, I wonder what lobbyist is behind this one.
Yeah. You know, and I guess, you know, it's kind of like with the solar, because you see all the ads, and you can't get away from solar right now,
especially in Florida.
Yeah, and here, I mean, I don't know what the specific incentive is for North Carolina, other than there's like $2,500 that you can get.
Y'all do get sun up there, right?
You do, yeah. There's some sun actually.
Oh yes, I know. I know how hot it can get in North Carolina in the summer.
Let me tell you. And it's extra heated right now. You know, in the midterms, there's always a lot of hot air blowing around.
Oh, mercy. Speaking, yeah, I take Scarborough, your ability to come up with perfect segues without really trying to do it is unparalleled, because the next item on my Congress.gov list is S4144, the icy hot, ICEEHOT, icy hot Act of 2022. Now, wasn't there a kind of a little pain relief ointment by that name one time? Maybe they still have it. I don't know.
It was a kind of a cloth-like thing that you snapped out of its container and placed in a certain area of your back or wherever you might happen to have a.
Aren't you dying to know what icy hot means relative to this bill?
I would love to know, because I'm certain it doesn't have anything to do with pain relief.
I would love to tell you. It's the Installing Clean Energy Efficient, or let's do that backwards. Installing Clean Efficient Energy Hastens Our Transition Act. ICE, Installing Clean Efficient Energy. That's the ICEE part. HOT, Hastens Our Transition Act of 2022. I tell you what, I bet you, I wonder who in Washington, D.C. makes up all these acronyms. I bet somebody's taken a lot of our money home, just sitting around all day trying to come up with these cute names for all these bills. Installing Clean Efficient Energy Hastens Our Transition.
It's to what, though? And for other purposes, of course.
And for other purposes. Absolutely.
It's people who come up with the names for all of the pain medications, all of the different prescriptions that you can get now for different things.
Well, this tripped the search that we were looking for, because farther on down in the text, it says the term residential central geothermal heat pump has the meaning given to the term qualified geothermal heat pump property in section 25D D5B of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. So now we have a definition of what municipal solid waste is. We have a definition of what a circuit board is. We have a definition of what manufactured means. And now we have a definition. In fact, it's actually there. The definition of what a geothermal heat pump is part of our tax code. Folks, can you see what we're talking about here? We need to get rid of all of this garbage and replace it with the fair tax. I guarantee you that the fair tax bill does not contain the definition of what a geothermal heat pump is.
I got to tell you, Bob, I'm just flabbergasted by every week that we focus in on this, and it's nothing that you really have to think about, folks, other than, you know, the alternative is a life of relative ease with regard to how you are taxed. You have a tax on consumption, that's the fair tax. You have every other kind of tax, like a flat tax, which is an income tax. You have the income tax, which of course is an income tax. And then, you can think of anything else, the VAT tax in Europe, that's a tax on top of the tax.
Indeed.
And so at some point in time, we as the citizens of the United States, and we who have voted in people to represent us in Congress, and our states that have 2 senators, need to come up with, make a decision. It's sort of like what you just said about icy hot. Aid, help in our transition away from an income tax.
That works.
To a tax on consumption. But I think what it is there is the folks that are up there that know, folks that are up there, meaning folks in Washington, definitely know about the fair tax. We're on radar, although we're not blipping, loud enough, hard enough, regularly enough to where people can actually say, okay, well, yeah, we know about the fair tax, but we're not going to do anything about it because we really don't know how to handle it. What they really don't know how to do is handle what happens to them and their particular process when the fair tax is enacted. I think that's the challenge that, you got to figure out how are we going to do what we're doing in a different environment with a different process in place. And I think that's probably one of the answers as I sit and think about it. I think that's
talking about making a blip on the radar screen. That just tripped something in the back of my head. Yeah. A FAIRtax supporter and co-sponsor, Representative Kat Kamek from right up here in Florida, is running, I read the other day, for some kind of leadership position within the Republican Party. And I don't have all the details on that in front of me, so I'm not going to try to comment on it and maybe get something wrong. But a good FAIRtax co-sponsor is trying to become part of the leadership team. So maybe that's good news. Okay, let me move on, Kurt, because we got some other stuff we got to get to. This Icy Hot Act was, by the way, from Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts. And not to be outdone, Senator Klobuchar of Minnesota has, and again, the acronym writers have been busy at work here. She is sponsoring the HEATR Act, HEATR, the HEATR Act. What would you like to know what the HEATR Act stands for?
Yeah, absolutely. HEATR.
This is actually similar to the Icy Hot one. HEATR stands for Heating Efficiency and Affordability Through Tax Relief Act. Now, how are you going to translate tax relief into heating efficiency and affordability? And it says that to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a tax credit for manufacturers of high efficiency heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. So there we got Icy Hot and HEATR all together dealing with supposedly efficient energy, heating efficiency and affordability through tax relief. I tell you what, I bet I could write some that are as good as this one and make more money than
you get you a third part-time job in your retirement there.
Yes, I've done retired from doing any of this stuff, but that's it. The Icy Hot Act and the HEATR Act and all this other garbage that we highlight every week on FAIRtax Power Radio. Again, we do it for the purpose of showing people just how crazy the current tax code is and how much more crazy the Congress critters want to make it, and to incentivize people to get behind the idea we need to rip it all out by the roots and replace it with a fair tax. And that's exactly what the fair tax does. It repeals the entire Internal Revenue Code. All 70,000, well, not the code itself is not quite 70,000 pages. That refers to the code and the statutes and the regulations and the court opinions and all of theirs. But I guarantee you that the Internal Revenue Code is longer than the 130 pages it takes to describe the fair tax.
Right, absolutely. And what we talked about a week ago with regard to the 30 million pages of associated documents that that were destroyed a year and 2 or 3, 4 months ago. Now they're dictating to some of their staff, you need to go and put some time in and come up with a way that we can incentivize businesses to do more e-filing, so we don't have to worry about all this paper. And I from an efficiency standpoint, I absolutely agree with that. But at the same time, you have a lot of people that run in that office at the Internal Revenue Service. Why do we have
get rid
to
of
get
the whole
into
Internal Revenue Service?
Yeah, let's just get, it's time to close it down, and the time is now. And the question is, how, our listeners and viewers, how are you prepared to tackle this? You get up in the morning and you say, okay, how am I going to be able to make this happen today? Well, who can I talk to today, other than people that you come upon in your daily affairs? But who can I call, or who can I talk to? Who can I write a letter to? And we know that people start to perk up several different ways in Washington. Number one, when many people call about the same issue. Number two, if you are, and especially in the election cycles, if you show up on a voter roll that you vote in the primaries, and you vote in the general, and you voted in the last primary, and you voted in the general before that, they are going to know that you are an engaged and informed individual. And so you are going to want to be about getting in touch with your candidates and with the elected representatives and saying, hey, it's time to move along on this. We need to get some things going.
We do. And we've probably got more people that would be willing to help us than they know about it. Because I like to use the example that I never realized that I was a stock car fan until I went to my first stock car race.
Right.
Okay. And I'm dating myself. It was there at Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
In August of 1969, Richard Petty won it. He was driving a Ford, the only year that Richard himself ever drove a Ford. And it was his 100th victory. And of course, he retired with 200 victories. So that tells you how long ago it was that I discovered that I was a stock car fan. But a while back in Florida, we came up with the idea, let's sell the sizzle, not the steak. Let's tell people what the FAIRtax does more so than how it works. And we actually came up with 2 sets of these sizzle points that we call them. One was for individuals, and we haven't gone through the one for business in quite a while. There's 10 of them, and we've only got 10 minutes left here on the show, so we're not going to get a chance to go through all 10 of them. But this is how you know that you can discover that you're a FAIRtax fan. We're speaking mostly now to small business owners, but if you work for a small business, and more people work for small businesses than big ones, you should want your business to succeed so they can continue to pay you your salary and benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
So here we go. If you would like your business tax compliance costs to go down by at least 80% and probably more, you might be a FAIRtax fan. The FAIRtax gets rid of the enormous costs that businesses of all sizes have to pay just to comply with the tax code. Again, we talked with Jade Wally about that a few weeks ago, and it was insane how much the businesses have to spend. And every dollar that the business has to spend on compliance costs, on their paying their tax attorneys, paying their accountants, the time that they would spend on that, all of that cost is just simply a cost of doing business. It gets rolled into the prices of the products and services you buy. So if you can decrease the cost of doing business in that significant a way, you're going to see a reaction on retail prices at the retail level. That's just insane. If you want to see those costs go away out of the business world, you might be a FAIRtax fan.
That's right. Number 2. If you'd like to simplify your payroll tax calculations by eliminating withholding and payroll taxes, you might be a FAIRtax fan.
I wonder, I've never owned a small business. I've never managed a small business. I've worked for a couple of small business, little radio stations, but I've never had to do the withholding part of it. But I imagine, and I remember one year when they were still trying to figure out what the deduction tables are going to look like. And this was extended beyond January 1st. And all the businesses are saying, hey, tell us what we need to do. And we don't know yet. So you talk about a mud mess that was.
You had to hold up your entire process while you were waiting on the determination of what that was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
This is a big one. If you'd like to see American products be more competitive in the world market, you might be a FAIRtax fan. People don't understand just how injurious to American business the tax code is when you're talking about goods produced and sold on the world market. Because, you know, the foreign manufacturers over in Europe and where they have these that VAT, the value added tax, those manufacturers get that rebated back to them, so that the costs of foreign produced products that go out onto the world market do not contain the embedded costs of the tax system there, because the manufacturers get that back, meaning they can offer their prices at their goods at a lower price, undercut American products on the world stage. They win and we lose under that. And if you'd like to fix that, you might be a FAIRtax fan by getting rid of the income tax system that's putting it at such a disadvantage.
Absolutely. Number 4, if you're tired of being punished for your productivity, you might be a FAIRtax fan. And again, this has to do with the time, I think, that it takes for Mr. Small Business Owner to sit in the compliance seat when he should be in the innovation and creation seat. This gives him ample time. And the fact that, you know, regulations that are on there on your bit, whatever your company is producing or whatever service you're offering, there's all kinds of opportunity for you to get tripped up by the tax code, and time taken away from the creativity side of it is money lost potentially down the road.
Jade Wally talked on, we keep talking about Jade, but he knows so much and can present it so well. He get on that same thing here a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about inflation. How if you've got more resources that you can devote to research and development, that would lead to an increase in productivity. And with an increase in productivity, when he was talking about it, was a way to fight inflation. But if you're tired of being punished for your productivity, meaning the way it is now, the more productive you are and the more successful your business is, the more they tax you.
That's right.
So there is a disincentive to go in that direction with the current income tax system that goes away with the fair tax.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And we do fairtax.gov. Each week we talk about volunteers and how if we get out there and even if you decided today that you were going to go and talk, put a little talk together for the Chamber of Commerce in your community, that would be a really great place to start, and use the list that we're using right here as part of your presentation. I think a lot of businesses would perk up, especially right now when there's a lot of pressure from inflation and all the resulting prices increasing in the marketplace. The costs of goods are going way up. You know, the consumer hasn't even been hit by all of that just yet, but maybe you have. We've seen prices at the grocery store go up, but we haven't seen the effect necessarily on prices due to the fuel shortage, the high prices on fuel yet, especially diesel. We know that's coming, that prices, because the consumer ends up paying on everything anyway. So
the cost of shipping products to market is included in the final retail prices. And if the trucker that gets it there has to pay twice as much for his diesel fuel as he did 2-3 years ago, that is going to affect the retail price of things. We've got to move along. We've only got about 4 minutes left here in the program. I'm going to skip down a couple of them because this is a big one. If you'd like to see outsourced jobs come back to the United States, you might be a FAIRtax fan. How does that work?
Yeah, well, that's awesome, because there's a lot of money that's invested overseas because of the tax code here. Financial, planning includes some of that, especially at the corporate or multinational level. Where
think about how much that we consume is manufactured offshore. Right. If we could bring those manufacturing facilities and the jobs that come with those manufacturing facilities back to the United States by making the United States the world's tax haven, and just come over here. The cost of doing business here is a lot lower than it is over there because they're going to tax you and we're not.
And the other side of that too is the next one on the list here, which is number 9. If you'd like to see trillions of dollars brought back into the United States economy from offshore, I heard somewhere where it's like 13 or 14 trillion dollars. I bet it's a lot more right now.
Well, every time they try to raise the corporate tax rate, corporations just park their money somewhere else to avoid it.
Exactly.
So again, if you say the corporate tax rate in America is going to be 0, and of course that's going to send some people into cardiac arrest. Oh my goodness, corporations have to pay their fair share. Until they realize that taxes on corporations are just a cost of doing business that gets rolled into the price of everything that you and me has to pay. And that is when people understand that concept, they will realize that the appropriate corporate tax rate is indeed El Zippo 0.
That's right. That's right. You do the last one, because this is absolutely, in my mind, one of the most important components of the switcheroo, if you want to call it that, from an income tax to a tax on consumption.
Yes, if you'd like to see a system that benefits the people and not the politicians, you might be a FAIRtax fan. All you got to do is to go back in the archives of FAIRtax Power Radio and see how much stuff the politicians are trying to put in the tax code. And don't think for a minute that they're not getting benefits from lobbyists for doing that. The chairman's reports that Steve Hayes writes hits on the same thing. And in fact, there's one here just fairly recent, a couple of weeks ago, about how that it's illegal to bribe a member of Congress, but there's still kind of a backdoor way you can provide reward for services by the lobbyists buying their tickets at their fundraisers and contributing to their campaigns and stuff like that. And all of that
has to do with the reelection. You have to make a lot of money. You have to raise a lot of money once you're up there to get reelected. It's almost like you get sworn in for your next term. And you have to immediately start raising money, and there's really no way to do that through the constituents alone. You have to do it through PACs.
At one time, somebody did a study, and I don't remember the figures off the top of my head, but it was astounding. They took the total cost of, say, a contested election for the House of Representatives, and that total cost, and then broke it down by how much money per day do these representatives have to get in order to have the war chest they need to get reelected. And so, when you take the income tax system out of that equation and replace it with a fair tax, then you've got a system that benefits the people and not the politicians and the lobbyists. And mercy.
Absolutely.
And we are slap out of time here again for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Time does indeed fly when you're having fun. I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to go onto fairtax.org and just dig into the FAQ there for the next couple of weeks. Tell folks what this is all about, what we're talking about. But then again, until then, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So tell me how it works.
It's probably changed since the last time I saw it. But the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, now see, that's amazing.
And so the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.
That's the FAIRtax. We